In the quiet hour before the world fully wakes, there is a small doorway that almost no one notices. It is not made of stone or wood. It is made of attention. And if you step through it, if only for a few breaths, something ancient in you remembers how to live. Welcome to Daily Dharma Listening. Here, we don't rush toward answers. We walk slowly beside questions until they soften. We listen for the kind of truth that does not shout, the kind that arrives like dawn, quietly, steadily, changing everything without forcing anything. If you found your way here because life feels loud, because your mind has been running too long, because you want to learn how to stay calm and positive while the days keep demanding more, then you are in the right place. Stay with me for this first chapter, and let's begin where Buddhist teachings often begin, not with a grand belief, but with a simple observation. There is a scene that repeats itself in modern life like a familiar film. A person sits in traffic with a pulse that beats too fast. Another lies awake at midnight, scrolling through news and messages as if the next refresh might finally deliver relief. Someone else smiles in a meeting while their chest feels tight, carrying silent dread like a hidden weight. The world outside looks normal, but inside, a storm is rehearsing its lines. This is how anxiety often arises, not as a single event, but as a climate. And in that climate, many people start searching for Buddhist lessons for anxiety, not because they want a new identity, but because they want air. The old teachers would say the mind is like water. When it is still, it reflects the moon. When it is disturbed, it cannot hold a clear image of anything, not even itself. Yet here is the strange mercy of it: water does not need to be commanded into stillness. It only needs to be left alone long enough. The stillness is not manufactured, it is remembered. And that is one of the first gifts of Buddhist wisdom. You are not broken because you feel overwhelmed. You are not failing because your thoughts repeat. Your mind is simply moving the way minds move when they believe they must control life to survive it. If you are new to this path, if this is Buddhism for beginners in the most honest sense, meaning you are beginning again, beginning to look inward, beginning to ask what peace might actually be, then let this be your first understanding. Peace is not the absence of noise. Peace is the capacity to meet noise without being owned by it. The world will continue to produce uncertainty. Your phone will continue to glow with demands. Other people will continue to carry their own storms into your day. But there is a way to find peace in chaos, and it starts with learning the difference between what happens and what you add to what happens. Imagine you are walking through a market at dusk. Lanterns flicker. Voices rise and fall. Scents of smoke and spice drift through the air. A child laughs, someone argues, a bell rings in the distance. If you stand there for a moment, you might notice something. The sounds are simply sounds. They do not insist that you suffer. Your suffering begins when the mind selects one sound and declares it a threat, then builds a story around it. This is too much, I can't handle this, something is wrong. Buddhist teachings do not ask you to deny pain. They ask you to see the moment the mind turns raw sensation into a verdict about your life. This is why the ancient path feels so practical, even now. It does not ask you to believe in calm as an idea. It invites you to train calm as a skill. And the first training is surprisingly humble: to notice. Notice the tightening in the throat before the harsh words appear. Notice the heat in the face before anger takes the wheel. Notice the restless reach for distraction before it becomes an hour lost. Noticing is not passive. It is protective. It is how you protect your energy without building walls of bitterness. It is how you stop handing your inner life to every passing impulse. There is an old story of a traveler who carried a torch through a windy canyon. Each gust threatened to extinguish the flame, and the traveler grew frantic, cursing the wind and trying to fight it. Finally, an elder appeared and said, "You cannot defeat the wind, but you can cup your hands around the flame." The traveler asked, "Is that all?" The elder smiled. That is everything in daily life. The wind is the world, the unpredictability, the opinions, the deadlines, the disappointments, the constant change. The flame is your attention. And cupping your hands around it is the practice, small, consistent, unglamorous, and powerful. So how do we cup our hands around the flame when the mind is already spinning? We begin with breath, not because breath is magical, but because it is honest. Breath is the body's way of saying, "I am here." When anxiety pulls you into imagined futures, the breath remains in the present, like a loyal friend who refuses to abandon the moment. You don't have to force the breath to become calm. You only have to feel it. Feel the coolness as it enters. Feel the warmth as it leaves. And while you do, notice the mind's habit. It will try to turn even this into a project. It will ask, "Am I doing it right?" It will worry, "Why isn't this working?" Let those thoughts be like birds crossing a wide sky. You do not have to chase them. You can return to the breath the way you return to a home that does not judge you for leaving. This returning is the beginning of transformation. In time, you realize something quietly radical. You are not your thoughts. You are the one who can watch them. And once you know you can watch them, you can also choose not to obey them. This is how you transform your mind, not by suppressing thinking, but by changing your relationship to it. A thought says, "You will fail." You learn to answer, "Perhaps." Perhaps not. "I will meet what comes." A thought says, "You are not enough." You learn to respond, "This is an old voice. I do not need to build my future from it." A thought says, "What if everything collapses?" And you practice saying, "What if I can remain present even then?" To live without fear does not mean you never feel fear. It means fear no longer rules the decisions that shape your life. The world will always provide reasons to be afraid. But Buddhist teaching suggests that the deepest fear is not about events. It is about impermanence. Everything changes, and the mind panics because it wants a guarantee. It wants certainty, like a contract signed by the universe. Yet the universe does not sign contracts. It offers seasons. It offers waves. It offers the truth that nothing remains fixed, and therefore no single moment, no matter how painful, gets to be permanent either. When you truly see impermanence, something loosens. You stop demanding that life stay still. You begin to move with it. Let's make this modern, because ancient wisdom is meant to live in real streets and real kitchens. Picture a morning when you spill coffee on your shirt and the day feels cursed before it begins. The mind immediately writes a script. "This is going to be awful." That script spreads like ink, touching everything. A late email becomes proof. A stranger's cold expression becomes confirmation. By noon, you are living inside a story you wrote at 7:12 a.m. This is not just bad luck, it is how minds create suffering. Buddhist wisdom teaches you to interrupt the script. You can pause, feel the irritation in the body, and say, "This is a moment," not "This is my life." You can clean the stain, change the shirt, and continue without turning a spill into a prophecy. Or imagine a more serious day, the kind we all face sooner or later, an argument with someone you love, words spoken too sharply, silence afterward that feels like a locked door. The mind begins to replay the scene, adding new lines, rewriting endings, escalating blame. You might search for Buddhist reminders when you feel lost, because the mind has made a maze. Here is one reminder: the present is the only place reconciliation can occur. Not in the replay. Not in the fantasy of the perfect apology. The present, where you can feel your own pain without weaponizing it, where you can listen without preparing a defense, where you can speak with honesty rather than triumph. Presence is not a retreat from life, it is the only way to meet life directly. This is why the practice can feel cinematic, like a long shot in a film where the camera doesn't cut away. Most people live as if they are constantly editing their reality, cutting out what they dislike, fast-forwarding through discomfort, pausing only to magnify what hurts. But mindfulness, the heart of so many Buddhist teachings, is the courage to keep the camera rolling, to watch the whole scene, to let the moment unfold without forcing it to become something else. And when you do that, the mind begins to trust you. It learns that you will not abandon experience the moment it turns difficult. It learns that you can stay. Staying does not mean tolerating harm. It means meeting your inner experience with clarity. It means noticing what drains you and what nourishes you, so you can protect your energy with wisdom rather than resentment. There are people, habits, and environments that leave you feeling scattered and thin, as if your attention has been poured out without being replenished. Protecting your energy is not selfish, it is necessary. In Buddhist wisdom, compassion includes yourself. If you burn your own lamp to keep everyone else warm, eventually there is darkness for all. So you learn boundaries as a form of kindness. You learn rest as a form of respect. You learn silence as medicine. And now, let's return to the question many people carry like a secret: how to stay calm and positive when the world gives you so many reasons not to. The answer is not forced optimism. Forced optimism is a mask the mind wears to avoid grief. Calm and positivity in the Buddhist sense are deeper. They are grounded. They come from seeing clearly, and from practicing non-attachment, not indifference, but freedom. You can care deeply and still not cling. You can love and still not possess. You can work and still not tie your worth to outcomes. When you stop clinging, you stop being dragged. There is a moment in meditation when you notice you have been lost in thought for minutes, maybe longer. In that moment, you could judge yourself, but the wiser move is to smile, because noticing is the victory. Noticing means the light is on. Noticing means awareness has returned. And then you begin again. This is the rhythm: wandering, noticing, returning. It is not a failure, it is the practice. And life itself works the same way. You will wander into fear. You will wander into comparison. You will wander into numbness. And then, if you train, you will notice. You will return. You will begin again. This is how you find peace in chaos, by becoming someone who can come back. Perhaps you're listening tonight, or driving, or sitting alone with a tired mind. Maybe you feel like you've tried everything. Let this be simple. You do not need to solve your entire life in one sitting. You only need to meet this moment with honesty. Feel the body where it touches the chair or the bed. Notice the breath. Notice the mind. And if the mind is loud, let it be loud without believing it is the whole truth. You are larger than the noise. You are the space in which the noise appears. And if you want a small assignment, not as a list, but as a gentle invitation, the next time you feel the surge of anxiety, pause and name what is actually present. Tightness in chest. Heat in face. Racing thoughts, name it the way you would name weather: windy. cloudy, this naming creates distance. It turns panic into phenomena. It turns a storm into a sky event. And then ask yourself one quiet question. What is the kindest next breath? Not, what is the perfect solution? Just the kindest next breath. You will be surprised how often that is enough to shift the whole scene. This channel is a long road of such moments. Each part will be its own lantern. Each lesson will stand alone, yet together they will form a path. We will explore Buddhist teachings with the patience of a river-shaping stone. We will keep the pace slow, because the mind needs slowness to relearn what it forgot. We will bring Buddhist wisdom into the places you actually live, relationships, work, solitude, uncertainty, and change. And if you are here because you are beginning, then know this: Buddhism for beginners is not about being new to ideas. It is about being new to your own attention. Before we close this first chapter, I'll ask one simple thing, softly, the way a friend might ask at the doorway. If daily Dharma listening brings you a sense of steadiness, if these reflections help you live without fear even for a few minutes, please take a moment to subscribe so you can continue this journey with us. If you know someone who is searching for Buddhist lessons for anxiety or a way to protect their energy in a demanding world, share this with them. And if this episode met you in a tender place, a gentle light can help this quiet work reach more people who need it. Now, let's end the way we began, with a doorway. The world will keep moving. The wind will keep blowing through the canyon. But you have hands. You have breath. You have awareness. Cup your attention around the flame. Walk forward slowly. And when you forget, when you get lost, remember that the path is not somewhere else. The path is the next moment you return. There is a quiet misunderstanding that follows many people through their lives, like a shadow they mistake for themselves. It is the belief that peace must be earned after everything is resolved, after the right outcome appears, after the world finally behaves. Yet the old teachings speak differently. They say peace is not a reward at the end of struggle. Peace is a way of standing inside struggle without being broken by it. In the early hours of morning, before the city fully stirs, you can sometimes sense this truth without words. The air feels open. Even unfinished worries seem lighter. Nothing has been solved, yet something feels possible. This is not because circumstances have changed, but because the mind has not yet tightened its grip. Buddhist teachings often point to this simple fact: suffering grows when the mind clings, and softens when the mind loosens. The world does not need to become safe for you to feel safe. The mind needs to stop demanding guarantees that life cannot give. Consider how often fear disguises itself as preparation. The mind says it is worrying to protect you, rehearsing worst-case scenarios so you will not be surprised. But notice how this preparation rarely leads to clarity. It leads to exhaustion. The body stays tense as if danger is already present. The heart grows guarded. Slowly, without noticing, you begin to live as if the imagined future is already real. This is how anxiety steals the present while pretending to defend it. Buddhist wisdom invites a different approach, one that does not deny uncertainty but refuses to let uncertainty dominate consciousness. There is an ancient image of a man crossing a river on a raft. Once he reaches the far shore, he does not carry the raft on his back for the rest of his journey. The raft was useful, not sacred. In the same way, thoughts are tools, not masters. They help you plan, remember, and communicate. But when you carry every thought as if it were absolute truth, you turn tools into burdens. Learning to set the raft down is one of the most practical lessons in Buddhism for beginners and for those who have walked the path for years. It is the art of using the mind without being used by it. To find peace in chaos, you must first see how much chaos is manufactured internally. This is not blame. It is empowerment. When you realize how often suffering arises from interpretation rather than fact, you gain room to breathe. A delayed message becomes an insult. A neutral comment becomes a judgment. Silence becomes rejection. None of these meanings are guaranteed by reality. They are projections, shaped by memory and fear. When you see this clearly, you begin to pause. You begin to wait before believing the story. That pause is the space where freedom enters. Modern life encourages constant reaction. Notifications arrive like tiny alarms, each demanding attention, each pulling awareness outward. Over time, the mind becomes fragmented, scattered across dozens of unfinished impressions. No wonder so many people feel drained without knowing why. Buddhist teachings speak of protecting your energy not as something mystical, but as something deeply practical. Energy flows where attention goes. If attention is endlessly pulled outward, there is little left to nourish the inner life. Reclaiming attention is not withdrawal from the world. It is learning to meet the world from a centered place. Imagine sitting by a river and watching leaves drift past. Some move quickly, others slowly. You do not jump into the water to chase each one. Thoughts are like these leaves. Some are urgent, some repetitive, some emotionally charged. The practice is not to stop the river, but to stop leaping after every leaf. When you sit on the bank of awareness, something changes. Urgency loses its grip. Perspective returns. This is how you transform your mind without force. Transformation happens not through control, but through understanding. Many people ask how to stay calm and positive when life repeatedly disappoints. The answer does not lie in suppressing disappointment. Disappointment hurts because it reveals attachment. You wanted something to last, to arrive, to be different. Buddhist wisdom does not tell you to stop wanting. It teaches you to see wanting clearly, so it does not harden into suffering. Desire itself is not the enemy. Clinging is. When you cling, you tell yourself that your well-being depends on a specific outcome. When that outcome fails, the ground seems to disappear beneath you. But when you loosen your grip, you discover something surprising. You can still care, still act, still hope, without collapsing when things change. This understanding brings a quiet courage. It allows you to live without fear, not because fear never appears, but because fear no longer defines your identity. Fear becomes a visitor, not a ruler. It comes, it speaks, and it leaves. You listen without surrendering authority. In this way, fear loses its power to shape your choices. You begin to act from values rather than from panic. Your life gains coherence, not because it is predictable, but because it is aligned. There is a deep kindness in this path. It does not demand perfection. It expects wandering. The mind will drift. Old habits will return. Moments of clarity will be followed by moments of confusion. This is not failure. It is rhythm. The practice is simply to notice and return. Return to the body. Return to the breath. Return to what is actually happening now. This returning is a form of devotion, not to an idea, but to reality itself. In moments when you feel lost, when direction blurs and motivation fades, Buddhist reminders can be surprisingly simple. You are here. This moment is still available. You can begin again from right where you stand. Nothing essential has been taken from you. Even confusion can be met with awareness. Even doubt can be held gently. When you stop fighting your own mind, you recover energy that was trapped in resistance. That energy becomes clarity, patience, and insight. As this journey continues, each lesson will invite you deeper into everyday application. Not into abstraction, but into living differently within the same circumstances. The ancient path does not require a new life. It requires a new way of inhabiting the life you already have. When attention settles, when clinging loosens, when fear is seen rather than obeyed, something fundamental shifts. The world does not become quieter, but you become steadier. And from that steadiness, wisdom begins to move naturally through thought, word, and action. For now, let this be enough. Let the mind rest in what has been heard without rushing to conclusions. Let understanding ripen at its own pace. The river continues to flow. The leaves continue to pass. And you remain on the bank, watching, breathing, learning what it means to be free within the movement of life. There comes a moment, often unnoticed, when the mind grows tired of running. Not tired in the way the body aches after labor, but tired in a deeper, quieter sense. Tired of rehearsing conversations that never happen. Tired of carrying yesterday into today. Tired of scanning tomorrow for danger. This is not weakness. This is the beginning of wisdom. Buddhist teachings recognize this fatigue as an invitation, not a failure. When the mind can no longer sustain its own noise, it becomes ready to listen. In ancient times, seekers did not arrive at understanding because they were strong, confident, or complete. They arrived because they were honest. Honest about restlessness. Honest about dissatisfaction. Honest about the subtle pain of never feeling settled, even when life appeared successful. This honesty is the soil in which Buddhist wisdom grows. Without it, practice becomes performance. With it, practice becomes refuge. Modern life teaches you to outrun discomfort. If silence feels heavy, fill it. If sadness appears, distract it. If fear arises, bury it under activity. But what is buried does not disappear. It waits. It gathers strength in the dark. Buddhist teachings suggest a different movement, one that feels counterintuitive at first, turning toward what you usually avoid. Not to indulge it, not to dramatize it, but to see it clearly. Clarity dissolves confusion the way light dissolves shadow. Not by fighting, but by revealing. There is a simple truth that many overlook: the mind creates most of its suffering in resistance. Pain itself is often manageable. Resistance to pain multiplies it. When something unwanted arises, the mind immediately says, "This should not be happening." That sentence, repeated silently, creates tension, bitterness, and exhaustion. But when you remove that sentence, when you allow the moment to be exactly what it is, something unexpected happens. The pain remains, but the suffering softens. This is not resignation. It is alignment with reality. To transform your mind, you must first stop treating it as an enemy. The anxious mind is not trying to destroy you. It is trying to protect you with outdated strategies. It learned vigilance in moments when vigilance was necessary, and it forgot to update its methods. Buddhist wisdom meets this mind with compassion rather than force. Instead of saying, "Stop worrying," it asks, "What are you trying to protect?" Instead of saying, "Be calm," it asks, "What feels threatened?" These questions open space. They invite understanding instead of suppression. This is especially important for those seeking Buddhist lessons for anxiety. Anxiety thrives on speed. It rushes ahead, stacking imagined outcomes, demanding immediate resolution. Awareness slows everything down. When you slow the breath, the body follows. When the body settles, the mind loses momentum. Not instantly, not perfectly, but enough to interrupt the cycle. Enough to remind you that you are not trapped. Enough to remember that fear is a sensation, not a prophecy. Imagine standing in a strong wind. If you tense your body and resist, you lose balance. If you relax slightly and adjust your stance, the wind passes through without knocking you down. This is how you live without fear. Not by eliminating the wind, but by learning how to stand within it. Fear will come. Uncertainty will come. Loss will come. The practice is learning how not to collapse when they do. There is another misunderstanding that burdens many people, the belief that inner peace means constant pleasant emotion. Buddhist teachings never promised perpetual happiness. They offered freedom from unnecessary suffering. Freedom looks quieter than happiness. It feels like steadiness, like space, like the ability to feel sadness without drowning in it, joy without clinging to it, anger without becoming it. This emotional literacy is rare in the modern world, yet it is essential for anyone who wants to find peace in chaos. Notice how often emotions are treated as commands. Anger says attack. Fear says hide. Desire says grasp. But emotions are messages, not orders. When you learn to listen without obeying, you regain authorship of your life. This is one of the most practical forms of Buddhist wisdom. It gives you choice where there used to be compulsion. It gives you response where there used to be reaction. In everyday life, this looks ordinary. Someone speaks sharply to you. The body tightens. Heat rises. The mind prepares its defense. And then, if awareness is present, there is a pause. In that pause, you feel the sensation without naming it as an enemy. You let the first wave pass. Maybe you still respond. Maybe you set a boundary. But you do not escalate unconsciously. You protect your energy not by hardening, but by staying awake. Protecting your energy also means recognizing when to stop feeding certain patterns. Endless consumption of distressing information. Repetitive conversations that go nowhere. Internal monologues that replay old wounds. None of these are inherently evil, but unchecked, they drain vitality. Buddhist teachings emphasize wise attention. Where attention goes, life follows. When attention is reclaimed, energy returns. When energy returns, clarity follows. There is a deep relief in realizing that you do not have to solve everything now. The mind believes urgency is necessary for survival. Wisdom understands timing. Some questions ripen only through living. Some answers arrive only after rest. When you allow yourself to not know, tension loosens. Not knowing becomes spacious rather than frightening. This is especially important for those moments when you feel lost. Being lost does not mean you have failed. It means you are between maps. Buddhist reminders when you feel lost often point to this truth. The path is not always visible because it is still forming beneath your steps. The ancient teachers spoke of walking the middle way. Not indulgence, not denial. Not control, not chaos. The middle way is balance, but not static balance. It is a living balance that adjusts moment by moment. Some days require effort. Some days require surrender. Wisdom lies in knowing which is needed now. This discernment grows only through attention, through presence, through honest contact with experience. How to stay calm and positive is not a formula. It is a relationship with reality. Positivity that denies pain becomes brittle. Calm that avoids truth becomes numb. Real calm includes clarity. Real positivity includes resilience. When you see clearly, you trust yourself more. When you trust yourself, fear loses leverage. You begin to live from the inside out rather than from the outside in. As this path unfolds, you may notice a subtle shift. Moments still arise, but they pass more quickly. Thoughts still appear, but they carry less authority. Emotions still move through, but they leave fewer scars. This is not because you have become detached from life. It is because you have become intimate with it. Intimacy dissolves fear. Distance feeds it. Let the understanding from this chapter settle quietly. Not as something to remember, but as something to feel. Feel the body where it sits. Feel the breath as it moves. Feel the space around thoughts rather than the thoughts themselves. In this space, something ancient recognizes itself. Something patient. Something unhurried. Something that has always known how to endure change without being lost within it. This is the heart of the path. Not escape, not perfection, but presence. And presence, once discovered, becomes a home you can return to, again and again, no matter where life carries you. There is a quiet moment that often arrives without announcement, when the mind suddenly realizes how much it has been carrying. Not dramatic burdens, not obvious tragedies, but countless small weights gathered over time. Unfinished conversations. Expectations never questioned. Identities slowly tightened around passing roles. In that moment, the heart does not cry out. It exhales. Buddhist teachings recognize this exhale as wisdom beginning to speak. Most suffering is not born from what happens, but from what is held. The mind holds grievances long after events end. It holds fear as if fear were a shield. It holds hope so tightly that disappointment feels like collapse. Ancient wisdom looks gently at this habit and says something radical in its simplicity: you can put things down. Not everything at once. Not forever. But now, in this moment, you can loosen your grip. There is an old image of someone walking across a desert carrying a heavy sack. Inside the sack are stones labeled duty, regret, comparison, resentment, worry. The person believes the sack is necessary for survival, that without it they would be irresponsible or unsafe. Yet with every step, the burden grows heavier. Buddhist wisdom does not tear the sack away. It invites the traveler to open it, to look inside, and to ask quietly, which of these stones must truly be carried now? This is how the practice enters daily life. Not through grand renunciation, but through small, honest releases. A thought arises that says you must fix everything immediately. You notice it. You feel the tension it creates. You choose not to obey. Another thought says you are behind, lacking, inadequate. You see how familiar it is. You let it pass without building a future from it. This is not avoidance. This is discernment. This is learning which thoughts deserve your energy and which do not. To find peace in chaos, you must learn the difference between engagement and entanglement. Engagement means you meet life fully, respond when needed, act with care. Entanglement means you fuse your identity with outcomes, with opinions, with narratives you cannot control. Buddhist teachings guide you toward engagement without entanglement. They show you how to stand in the river without being swept away. In modern life, this skill is essential. News cycles amplify fear. Social comparison quietly erodes contentment. Productivity culture teaches you that rest must be justified. Over time, the nervous system forgets how to be at ease. Buddhist lessons for anxiety begin here, with remembering what ease feels like in the body. Not as a luxury, but as a baseline. Ease does not mean everything is perfect. It means you are not fighting the present moment. The body is often wiser than the mind. It signals overload long before thoughts catch up. Shallow breath, clenched jaw, restless movement. These are not flaws. They are messages. Buddhist wisdom encourages listening before breakdown forces attention. When you slow down enough to feel the body, you interrupt cycles of stress that have become invisible through repetition. This listening is an act of respect toward your own life. There is also a deeper layer of holding that shakes suffering, the holding of identity. The mind says, "This is who I am, this is how things must be, this is what I cannot survive." These identities feel solid, but they are stories repeated until they feel permanent. Buddha's teachings invite you to examine them gently. Not to erase identity, but to loosen its rigidity. When identity softens, freedom expands. To live without fear is not to deny vulnerability. It is to stop building a self that must be defended at all costs. When you no longer need to prove your worth, criticism loses its sting. When you no longer cling to certainty, uncertainty becomes navigable. When you no longer define yourself by rules alone, change becomes less threatening. This is how courage grows quietly, without slogans or force. Transforming the mind does not happen through confrontation alone. It happens through familiarity. You sit with patterns long enough to understand them. You see how anger rises, peaks, and falls. You see how sadness moves like weather. You see how joy visits and departs. Nothing stays. This observation, repeated patiently, dissolves the illusion that any single state defines you. You become the witness rather than the content. From this witnessing, compassion naturally arises. Compassion in Buddhist wisdom is not sentimental. It is grounded in understanding. When you see how your own suffering arises, you recognize it in others. When you understand your own confusion, judgment softens. This does not mean you tolerate harm. It means you respond without hatred. It means you protect your energy without closing your heart. Boundaries and kindness are no longer opposites. Everyday situations become practice grounds. Waiting in line. Receiving criticism. Facing disappointment. Feeling envy. None of these moments are outside the path. They are the path. Each one reveals where you cling, where you resist, where you can release. Each one offers an opportunity to choose awareness over habit. Over time, these choices accumulate. Not dramatically, but steadily. Life begins to feel less like a battle and more like a conversation. How to stay calm and positive in this context is no longer about maintaining a mood. It is about maintaining clarity. Clarity allows you to meet joy without fear of loss and pain without fear of annihilation. Positivity becomes resilience. Calm becomes trust. Trust not that everything will go as planned, but that you can meet whatever arises with presence. There are moments when the mind will insist that letting go means losing something essential. But what is lost is not life, but illusion. What remains is lighter, more responsive, more alive. Buddhist teachings do not strip life of meaning. They remove excess weight so meaning can move freely. When you feel lost, when direction fades and motivation weakens, remember this simple truth from Buddhist reminders: when you feel lost, the path is not a straight line. Wandering is part of learning. Uncertainty is part of growth. You are not meant to have all answers at once. You are meant to stay awake to the process of becoming. As this chapter closes, allow the idea of release to settle gently. Not as a command, but as permission. Permission to rest the mind. Permission to soften the body. Permission to stop carrying what no longer serves this moment. The world continues. Demands remain. But something inside has shifted. Something has loosened. This loosening is not an end. It is an opening. And through this opening, ancient wisdom continues to flow into ordinary life, teaching you again and again how to meet change without fear, how to find peace in chaos, and how to live with a mind that knows when to hold and when to let go. There is a subtle turning point on this path, a moment when effort quietly transforms into understanding. It arrives not with certainty, but with gentleness. The mind begins to see that control has limits, and in seeing this, something relaxes. Buddhist teachings often describe this as the moment when struggle gives way to trust. Not trust in outcomes, but trust in awareness itself. For many people, the deepest exhaustion does not come from what they do, but from how much they resist what is already happening. The mind argues with reality, insisting it should be different, easier, fairer, faster. This argument runs endlessly, draining life force while never winning. Buddhist wisdom steps in and asks a different question: what happens when the argument ends? Not when the problem ends, but when resistance softens. In that softening, energy returns. Clarity returns. Choice returns. Anxiety often feeds on the belief that everything depends on you holding things together. This belief masquerades as responsibility, but it is closer to fear. Fear that if you relax, something will fall apart. Fear that if you stop worrying, you will be careless. Yet experience teaches a different lesson. When the mind is calm, perception sharpens. When perception sharpens, response becomes more skillful. This is how Buddhist lessons for anxiety work in lived reality. Calm is not passivity. Calm is readiness without panic. Consider how nature moves. A tree does not tense against the wind. It bends. It does not predict every storm. It grows roots. These roots are not opinions or plans. They are presence. Attention. Connection to what is real now. When storms come, the tree survives not because it knew the future, but because it was grounded. This is how you learn to live without fear. Not by eliminating storms, but by deepening roots. To transform your mind, you must see how often it confuses urgency with importance. Everything feels immediate, demanding reaction. But when you slow down, priorities reveal themselves. Many things do not require instant response. Many worries do not require action at all. Buddhist teachings encourage discernment, the quiet wisdom that knows when to act and when to wait. Waiting is not avoidance. It is patience informed by clarity. This patience changes relationships. Instead of reacting from old wounds, you begin to listen. Instead of defending an identity, you begin to understand another's perspective. This does not mean you abandon boundaries. It means boundaries become conscious rather than reactive. You protect your energy without hostility. You say no without guilt. You say yes without resentment. These shifts are subtle, but they reshape daily life. How to stay calm and positive in a demanding world is not about cultivating constant optimism. It is about cultivating steadiness. Steadiness allows positivity to arise naturally, without forcing. When the mind is not overwhelmed, gratitude becomes accessible. Not gratitude as a performance, but gratitude as recognition. Recognition that this breath is here. This moment is workable. This life, even with its imperfections, is still unfolding. Finding peace in chaos does not mean retreating from complexity. It means learning how to stand within it without losing center. Chaos will continue to visit the world. Change is relentless. Uncertainty is guaranteed. Buddhist wisdom teaches you to stop demanding certainty and start cultivating adaptability. Adaptability is strength without rigidity. It allows you to meet what comes without breaking. There is also a quiet joy that emerges along this path. Not excitement, but contentment. Contentment does not depend on having more. It arises from needing less. Less reassurance. Less validation. Less control. When contentment grows, comparison fades. You no longer measure your life against others. You begin to inhabit it. For those new to this way, Buddhism for beginners often begins with simple questions. Why does the mind suffer? Why does peace feel elusive? Why does fear persist even when life seems stable? The answers are not hidden. They are revealed through attention. Suffering arises from clinging. Peace arises from understanding impermanence. Fear persists when identity feels threatened. When you see these patterns directly, they lose mystery. And what loses mystery loses power. Buddhist reminders when you feel lost often return to one essential truth: you are not behind. There is no finish line you have missed. Life is not a race toward enlightenment. It is a process of waking up to what is already here. Each moment of awareness counts. Each return from distraction matters. Nothing is wasted. As you continue listening, notice how these teachings are not separate from ordinary moments. They are not reserved for meditation cushions or quiet retreats. They live in conversations, in choices, in pauses between thoughts. They live in how you respond to difficulty and how you treat yourself when you falter. The path is woven into life, not laid on top of it. Before this chapter settles, allow one simple recognition to arise. You do not need to become someone else to be at peace. You need to stop fighting who you are. Acceptance is not resignation. It is the ground from which change becomes possible. When you accept the present moment, you work with it rather than against it. This cooperation with reality is the essence of Buddhist wisdom. If these reflections have brought a sense of steadiness, if daily Dharma listening has offered you a place to pause and reconnect with yourself, consider subscribing so this journey can continue together. Sharing this with someone who feels overwhelmed can offer them a moment of relief, or reminder that peace is learnable. And if this episode resonated, a simple like helps this quiet work reach others who are searching for a way to stay calm and positive in a noisy world. Now let the words fade into silence. Let understanding continue without effort. The path remains open, not somewhere ahead, but here, in the simple act of being present. There is a depth of quiet that does not depend on silence. It can be felt even in crowded streets, even in days filled with responsibility. This quiet is not the absence of sound, but the absence of inner conflict. Buddhist teachings speak of this state not as something mystical, but as something profoundly human. It arises when the mind stops arguing with the moment and begins to rest within it. Many people believe that peace requires distance from difficulty. They imagine a future where problems are solved, emotions are stable, and uncertainty no longer intrudes. Yet life rarely grants such conditions. Buddhist wisdom offers another possibility, peace that coexists with imperfection. This peace is not fragile. It does not shatter when plans change or when emotions fluctuate. It remains because it is rooted in understanding rather than control. Control is one of the mind's most convincing illusions. It promises safety, yet it quietly fuels anxiety. The more you try to manage every outcome, the more vigilant the mind becomes. Vigilance turns into tension. Tension turns into exhaustion. Buddhist teachings gently reveal this cycle and point toward release. Release does not mean indifference. It means recognizing the limits of influence and acting wisely within them. To find peace in chaos, you must see how much chaos is created by resistance to uncertainty. Uncertainty itself is neutral. It becomes threatening only when the mind insists on certainty. This insistence creates fear, and fear narrows perception. When perception narrows, options disappear. Awareness restores breadth. It allows you to see multiple responses where fear saw only danger. The practice of awareness begins in ordinary moments. Noticing the breath while washing dishes. Feeling the body while waiting. Observing thoughts without chasing them. These moments may seem insignificant, yet they reshape the nervous system. Over time, the body learns that it is safe to be present. The mind learns that it does not need to rush. This is how Buddhist lessons for anxiety work at their deepest level. They retrain the system to recognize safety in the present moment. Fear often arises from identification. The mind says, "This thought is me, this emotion is me, this story defines me." Buddhist wisdom gently questions this assumption. It invites you to observe thoughts as events, emotions as movements, stories as constructions. When you see them as processes rather than identities, fear loosens its grip. You are no longer defending a fixed self. You are participating in a living experience. To live without fear does not mean fear never visits. It means fear no longer controls direction. It becomes one signal among many, not the loudest voice in the room. Courage, in this sense, is not bravado. It is the willingness to feel fear without surrendering to it. This willingness grows through familiarity. The more you meet fear with awareness, the less mysterious it becomes. Transforming the mind requires patience. Patterns that formed over years do not dissolve overnight. Yet every moment of awareness weakens old habits. Each time you pause instead of reacting, you create a new pathway. Each time you choose presence over rumination, you strengthen clarity. Change happens quietly, beneath the surface, until one day you notice that situations that once overwhelmed you now feel workable. Protecting your energy becomes natural as awareness deepens. You begin to sense when engagement is nourishing and when it is draining. You notice the cost of certain conversations, certain habits, certain thought loops. This noticing is not judgment. It is wisdom. With wisdom, choices become simpler. You invest energy where it supports life rather than depletes it. Buddhism for beginners often emphasizes discipline, but true discipline is gentle. It is consistency without harshness. It is returning again and again without self-criticism. When the mind wanders, you return. When patience fades, you return. When understanding slips, you return. Returning is the practice. Perfection is not required. How to stay calm and positive becomes less of a question and more of a byproduct. Calm arises from clarity. Positivity arises from trust. Trust not that everything will be easy, but that you can meet difficulty without losing yourself. This trust grows from experience, from seeing again and again that presence steadies the mind. There are moments when you will feel lost, when direction blurs and motivation weakens. In these moments, Buddhist reminders when you feel lost return you to simplicity. You are breathing. You are aware. This moment is still here. Nothing else is required. From this simplicity, the next step becomes visible. As this chapter unfolds, allow the mind to rest in what has been felt rather than what has been concluded. Understanding does not always arrive as insight. Sometimes it arrives as ease. Sometimes as patience. Sometimes as silence. All are valid signs of the path deepening. The world will continue to change. Challenges will continue to arise. Yet within this movement, a steadiness becomes possible. Not because life has become predictable, but because awareness has become reliable. This reliability is the quiet strength at the heart of Buddhist wisdom. It allows you to move through life with openness rather than fear, with engagement rather than resistance, and with a mind that knows how to return home to the present moment. There is a kind of strength that does not announce itself. It does not push, does not argue, does not seek to dominate. It waits, observes, and responds when the moment is right. Buddhist teachings speak often of this quiet strength, not as a special achievement, but as a natural quality that emerges when the mind stops fighting itself. When inner conflict dissolves, energy reorganizes. What remains is steadiness. Many people move through life as if they are bracing against an invisible force. Shoulders tighten. Breath shortens. Thoughts harden into strategies of defense. This bracing becomes so familiar that it feels normal. Yet it is costly. It drains vitality. It narrows vision. Buddhist wisdom gently reveals that much of this tension is unnecessary. Not because life is easy, but because resistance to life adds an extra layer of suffering. To find peace in chaos, you must learn how to stand without bracing. This does not mean collapsing or becoming passive. It means aligning with what is happening rather than opposing it internally. When you align, action becomes more efficient. Clarity replaces panic. The body no longer wastes energy on inner battles that cannot be won. There is an old teaching that says suffering is optional, but pain is inevitable. Pain arises from loss, change, disappointment, and effort. Suffering arises when the mind insists that pain should not exist. This insistence creates friction. Friction creates heat. Heat becomes distress. When you remove the insistence, pain remains, but suffering loosens. This distinction is subtle, yet transformative. Fear often intensifies when the mind imagines it must endure pain alone. Buddhist wisdom counters this illusion by revealing interconnectedness. Nothing arises in isolation. Your experience is shaped by countless conditions, seen and unseen. When you recognize this, self-blame softens. Isolation dissolves. You realize that struggle is not a personal failure, but a shared human condition. This recognition brings compassion, both inward and outward. To live without fear is to stop treating fear as an enemy. Fear is information. It signals uncertainty, vulnerability, change. When you listen without panic, fear becomes guidance rather than obstruction. It tells you where attention is needed. It shows you where values are at stake. But when fear is ignored or suppressed, it grows louder. Awareness gives it a voice without giving it control. Transforming the mind involves learning how to stay present when discomfort arises. Presence does not erase discomfort, but it prevents escalation. The moment you notice tension, you interrupt the spiral. The moment you feel emotion without naming it as wrong, you regain balance. This is how Buddhist lessons for anxiety work in real time. They train you to meet sensation before story takes over. There is a simplicity at the heart of this practice that the modern mind often overlooks. Complexity feels sophisticated. Simplicity feels naive. Yet simplicity is powerful. Feeling the breath. Noticing posture. Observing thought. These simple acts anchor awareness. They reconnect you with the body, which lives only in the present. The body does not worry about tomorrow. It does not replay yesterday. It responds to what is now. Protecting your energy becomes an intuitive response rather than a rule. You begin to sense when to engage and when to withdraw. Not from fear, but from wisdom. You notice when conversation becomes draining. You notice when rest is needed. Honoring these signals preserves vitality. Vitality supports clarity. Clarity supports wise action. The cycle reinforces itself. Buddhism for beginners often starts with learning to sit still. But the deeper teaching is learning to be still inside movement. Stillness inside movement allows you to act without agitation. It allows you to speak without hostility. It allows you to listen without defensiveness. This inner stillness is not rigidity. It is flexibility grounded in awareness. How to stay calm and positive becomes less about mood management and more about orientation. When the mind is oriented toward awareness, emotions flow without stagnation. Positivity emerges as resilience. Calm emerges as trust in the present moment. Trust grows not from belief, but from experience. Each time you meet difficulty without losing yourself, trust strengthens. There are times when you will feel directionless. Goals lose meaning. Motivation fades. These moments are often misunderstood as failure. Buddhist reminders when you feel lost offer a different perspective. Being lost can mean old directions no longer fit. It can mean growth is happening beneath the surface. Uncertainty can be a sign of transition rather than error. In these moments, the practice is not to force clarity. It is to remain present with not knowing. Not knowing creates space. Space allows insight to arise naturally. Forced answers close possibilities. Patience keeps them open. This patience is an act of faith, not in outcomes, but in the intelligence of awareness itself. As understanding deepens, you may notice that life feels less personal in a liberating way. Events still matter. Relationships still matter. But you no longer interpret everything as a reflection of your worth. Praise does not inflate. Criticism does not devastate. Success does not define. Failure does not condemn. You participate fully without being consumed. This is the freedom Buddhist wisdom points toward. Not withdrawal from life, but intimacy without entanglement. Engagement without exhaustion. Presence without fear. It is a freedom that grows quietly, nourished by attention, patience, and compassion. Let this chapter settle like sediment in clear water. Clarity does not require force. It emerges when disturbance subsides. The path continues, not as something you chase, but as something you inhabit. Each moment of awareness is a step. Each return to presence is arrival. And within this returning, the mind learns again how to rest, how to respond, and how to move through life with quiet strength. There is a moment when effort becomes unnecessary, not because the path is finished, but because understanding has begun to carry its own weight. The mind no longer strains to arrive somewhere else. It starts to sense that presence itself is enough to meet whatever arises. Buddhist teachings often describe this shift as a deepening of trust, the kind that does not depend on conditions. Most of the tension people feel comes from living slightly ahead of their own lives. The body is here, but the mind is already negotiating tomorrow. It calculates, predicts, prepares, and in doing so, it leaves the present unattended. Buddhist wisdom gently draws attention back, not to deny planning, but to restore balance. Planning has its place, but living happens now. When now is neglected, life feels hollow, even when busy. To find peace in chaos, you must recognize how often chaos is anticipated rather than experienced. Anticipation tightens the body. It accelerates thought. It creates emotional responses to events that have not occurred. When awareness returns to what is actually present, much of the imagined chaos dissolves. What remains is workable. What remains can be met. Fear often persists because the mind believes it must be ready for every possible outcome. Yet this readiness is impossible. No one can prepare for everything. Buddhist teachings reveal a quieter readiness, one rooted in adaptability rather than prediction. Adaptability trusts that clarity will arise when needed. It does not require rehearsing every scenario. It rests in the intelligence of awareness. To live without fear in this sense is to stop demanding certainty before moving forward. Certainty is rare. Clarity, however, is available. Clarity does not tell you what will happen. It tells you how to meet what happens. When you trust clarity, fear loses its urgency. It no longer needs to dominate attention to be heard. Transforming the mind involves seeing how often it confuses safety with familiarity. Familiar patterns feel safe, even when they cause suffering. Unfamiliar responses feel dangerous, even when they offer freedom. Buddhist wisdom invites experimentation. What happens if you pause instead of reacting? What happens if you rest instead of pushing? What happens if you listen instead of defending? These small experiments reveal new possibilities. Over time, the mind learns that safety can exist outside old habits. This is particularly important for those seeking Buddhist lessons for anxiety. Anxiety thrives on repetition. It repeats thoughts, images, and sensations until they feel inevitable. Awareness interrupts repetition. When you notice the loop, you step out of it. You may not feel instant relief, but you regain perspective. Perspective reduces intensity. Intensity gives way to space. Space is one of the most underestimated experiences on this path. Space around thoughts. Space around emotions. Space around identity. In space, things move freely. Without space, everything collides. Buddhist teachings cultivate space not by removing content, but by expanding awareness. Awareness holds experience without being crowded by it. Protecting your energy becomes a natural expression of this spaciousness. You no longer feel compelled to fill every silence or solve every problem. You allow things to unfold. You choose where to invest attention. Attention becomes deliberate rather than scattered. This deliberate attention restores vitality. Vitality supports presence. Presence supports wisdom. How to stay calm and positive becomes less of an effort and more of an orientation. Calm arises from spaciousness. Positivity arises from perspective. When you see the larger context, setbacks lose their finality. When you see impermanence clearly, difficulties lose their threat. Nothing lasts long enough to justify despair. Nothing remains stable enough to justify clinging. Buddhism for beginners often emphasizes letting go of attachment. But attachment is not always obvious. It hides in expectations. It hides in self-images. It hides in stories about how life should unfold. Noticing these subtle attachments is part of maturation on the path. Each time you notice one and loosen it, you feel lighter. Not because life has changed, but because you are carrying less. There are days when motivation fades, when the path feels distant or unclear. In these moments, Buddhist reminders when you feel lost return you to simplicity. Do what is directly in front of you. Feel the breath. Notice the body. Attend to one small task with care. Simplicity grounds the mind. From ground, direction emerges naturally. This grounding also changes how you relate to others. You listen more fully. You react less quickly. You sense when to speak and when silence serves better. Relationships become less about control and more about presence. Conflict still arises, but it is met with curiosity rather than defensiveness. Curiosity opens dialogue. Defensiveness closes it. There is a humility that grows along this path. Not humiliation, but humility. The recognition that you do not need to have all answers. That life is larger than your understanding. That uncertainty is not an enemy, but a companion. This humility softens rigidity. It allows learning to continue. It keeps the mind open. To find peace in chaos is to accept that chaos is part of life's movement. Seasons change. Circumstances shift. Identities evolve. Resisting this movement creates suffering. Moving with it creates resilience. Buddhist wisdom aligns you with change rather than against it. Alignment feels like ease, even when circumstances are challenging. As awareness deepens, moments of stillness appear more frequently. Not forced stillness, but natural pauses. In these pauses, the mind rests. Not in sleep, but in clarity. These pauses are nourishing. They restore balance. They remind you that beneath activity, there is a steady current of presence. This presence is not something you manufacture. It is something you notice. It has always been here, waiting beneath distraction. Each time you return to it, you strengthen familiarity. Familiarity breeds confidence. Confidence allows you to meet life openly. Let this chapter be an invitation to notice space. Space between thoughts. Space between breaths. Space between impulses and action. Within this space, wisdom operates quietly. It does not demand attention. It does not rush. It simply responds when needed. The path continues, not as a destination to reach, but as a way of being. Each moment of awareness renews it. Each return to presence deepens it. And within this ongoing movement, the mind learns how to rest even as life unfolds, how to remain steady amid change, and how to move forward without fear. There is a quiet honesty that begins to emerge when the mind stops pretending it knows how everything should unfold. This honesty does not feel dramatic. It feels sober, grounded, and strangely relieving. Buddhist teachings describe this moment as seeing things as they are, not as a philosophical achievement, but as a lived experience. When illusion softens, energy that was trapped in expectation is released. Much of human tension comes from negotiation with reality. The mind bargains endlessly, asking life to guarantee comfort before it agrees to relax. Yet life does not negotiate. It moves. When the mind finally recognizes this, it does not collapse. It steadies. Buddhist wisdom teaches that stability comes not from control, but from alignment with what cannot be controlled. In everyday life, this alignment shows itself in subtle ways. You stop rushing to fill every pause. You stop demanding immediate resolution. You stop interpreting uncertainty as danger. Instead, you learn to stay present with what is unfolding. Presence reveals that most moments are not crises. They are simply moments. This realization alone reduces suffering. To find peace in chaos, you must allow chaos to exist without making it personal. Chaos is movement without pattern. It does not target you. It does not carry intent. When you stop taking it personally, your nervous system relaxes. Reaction gives way to response. Response is slower, wiser, and less costly. Fear often survives because it is reinforced by imagination. Imagination builds entire futures out of fragments. It convinces the mind that disaster is imminent. Buddhist teachings do not condemn imagination. They invite discernment. Imagination used wisely creates art, innovation, empathy. Imagination used unconsciously creates anxiety. Awareness distinguishes between the two. To live without fear is to reclaim imagination from panic. Instead of imagining everything that could go wrong, you begin to imagine how you might respond skillfully. This shift does not deny risk. It restores agency. When you trust your ability to respond, fear loses its urgency. It no longer needs to dominate attention. Transforming the mind also involves understanding the role of habit. Habit is not only behavior. It is perception. The mind habitually scans for threat, for lack, for comparison. These habits were learned gradually, often in response to earlier conditions. Buddhist wisdom approaches habit with patience. Habits are not enemies. They are patterns that can be seen, understood, and gradually reshaped. This reshaping happens through repetition of awareness. Each time you notice a habitual thought without following it, you weaken its hold. Each time you pause before reacting, you create a new pathway. Change accumulates quietly. One day you realize that situations that once overwhelmed you now pass with less disturbance. This is not indifference. It is resilience. Protecting your energy becomes less about rules and more about sensitivity. You feel when something drains you. You feel when rest is needed. You feel when silence restores balance. Honoring these signals is not selfish. It is intelligent. Energy preserved becomes energy available for what truly matters. Buddhist lessons for anxiety often emphasize grounding. Grounding is not distraction. It is contact. Contact with the body. Contact with breath. Contact with the present moment. When anxiety pulls attention into imagined futures, grounding brings it back. The present moment may still contain difficulty, but it contains far less catastrophe than the imagined one. How to stay calm and positive is no longer framed as a task. It becomes a natural outcome of understanding impermanence. When you see clearly that all states pass, you stop clinging to pleasure and resisting pain. Calm arises from this balance. Positivity arises from trust that no state defines you permanently. Buddhism for beginners often focuses on learning concepts. Over time, concepts give way to lived insight. Insight is quieter. It does not announce itself. It simply changes how you relate to experience. You react less. You listen more. You recover faster. These changes are not dramatic, but they are profound. There are moments when you will feel unanchored. Plans dissolve. Certainty fades. Identity shifts. These moments can feel frightening if you believe stability must come from external structures. Buddhist reminders: when you feel lost, point inward. Awareness remains. Breath remains. Presence remains. These are not affected by changing circumstances. In this inward anchoring, you discover a deeper form of stability. Not stability of outcomes, but stability of attention. Attention that can stay with experience without fleeing. Attention that can witness discomfort without panic. Attention that can enjoy joy without grasping. This attention becomes a refuge. To find peace in chaos is to become intimate with change. Intimacy removes fear. When you expect change, you are not shocked by it. When you accept impermanence, you are not betrayed by it. Buddhist wisdom trains this acceptance gently, through repeated contact with the transient nature of experience. As the path deepens, the sense of self becomes lighter. Not erased, but less rigid. You no longer define yourself solely by roles, achievements, or failures. Identity becomes flexible. Flexibility allows growth. Growth feels natural rather than forced. This flexibility also softens judgment. Of yourself. Of others. When you see how conditions shape behavior, blame loses its sharpness. Accountability remains, but cruelty fades. Compassion grows not as an obligation, but as a recognition of shared vulnerability. There is a quiet joy in this recognition. Not excitement, but ease. Ease comes from no longer fighting what cannot be changed and no longer clinging to what cannot be held. This ease is the ground from which meaningful action arises. Let this chapter settle without conclusion. The teachings do not demand resolution. They invite observation. Observation leads to understanding. Understanding leads to freedom. Not freedom from life, but freedom within life. The path continues through ordinary moments. Through breath. Through attention. Through choice. Each moment offers the same invitation, to meet what is here with clarity rather than fear. Within this meeting, the mind learns again how to rest, how to respond, and how to move forward without being driven by illusion. There is a moment when understanding stops feeling like something you are chasing and begins to feel like something that is quietly shaping you from within. It does not arrive as a revelation. It arrives as a change in posture toward life. The shoulders soften. The breath deepens. The mind no longer rushes to judge every experience. Buddhist teachings describe this as maturation, the stage where insight begins to live through you rather than remain an idea you carry. By this point on the path, it becomes clear that suffering was never only about painful events. It was about resistance, about the constant inner demand that life should conform to your preferences. When that demand weakens, life does not suddenly become easy, but it becomes workable. Buddhist wisdom does not promise comfort. It promises clarity. And clarity, once established, changes everything. Many people believe they must resolve fear before moving forward. They wait for confidence to appear, for certainty to settle, for doubt to disappear. But fear does not vanish through waiting. It loosens through movement grounded in awareness. To live without fear is not to eliminate it, but to stop negotiating with it. Fear can speak, but it no longer decides. When fear stops deciding, life opens. This is where many Buddhist lessons for anxiety reveal their deeper purpose. They are not about calming symptoms alone. They are about shifting authority. Anxiety thrives when thoughts are treated as commands. Awareness restores choice. You begin to notice that thoughts arise automatically, but obedience is optional. This realization is not intellectual. It is experiential. And once experienced, it cannot be forgotten. To find peace in chaos, you must stop postponing peace. The mind often says, peace will come after this problem, after this phase, after this outcome. Yet the problem-solving mind never runs out of problems. Peace delayed becomes peace denied. Buddhist teachings invite peace into the middle of unfinished life. Not as resignation, but as grounding. From grounding, wise action becomes possible. Transforming the mind does not require force. Force creates resistance. Resistance strengthens the very patterns you wish to dissolve. Transformation happens through intimacy. You become intimate with your habits, your fears, your desires. You see them clearly, without drama. In that seeing, they lose their grip. Understanding replaces struggle. By now, it may be clear that how to stay calm and positive is not about maintaining a certain emotional tone. It is about maintaining relationship with awareness. Emotions rise and fall. Awareness remains. When you stay connected to awareness, emotions move freely without overwhelming you. Positivity becomes resilience rather than denial. Calm becomes steadiness rather than numbness. Protecting your energy takes on a deeper meaning here. It is no longer about avoiding everything that feels uncomfortable. It is about avoiding unconsciousness. Situations that once drained you may still be challenging, but they no longer deplete you in the same way because you meet them with presence rather than resistance. Energy flows where awareness is aligned. Buddhism for beginners often begins with effortful practice. Sitting, focusing, returning. Over time, practice becomes less about doing and more about being. Being attentive. Being honest. Being present. This shift is subtle, but profound. It marks the transition from technique to wisdom. There will still be moments when you feel lost. Direction will blur. Motivation will wane. These moments do not indicate failure. They indicate transition. Buddhist reminders when you feel lost point to this truth. Confusion often precedes clarity. Uncertainty often signals growth. When you stop trying to escape these states, they pass more gently. There is also a quiet humility that develops along the way. You see how often the mind believed it knew what was best. You see how often certainty created suffering. Humility does not weaken you. It frees you from rigidity. It allows learning to continue. It keeps the heart open. As understanding deepens, you may notice that life feels less urgent. Not because it matters less, but because you trust yourself more. You trust your ability to respond rather than predict. You trust awareness rather than control. This trust is the foundation of peace. And now, at this point in the journey, it is worth pausing together. If daily Dharma listening has accompanied you through these reflections, if these teachings have helped you find peace in chaos or offered clarity when the mind felt crowded, take a moment to subscribe so this path can continue unfolding with you. Sharing this space with others who seek Buddhist wisdom for everyday life allows these quiet teachings to reach where they are most needed. And if this chapter resonated, a simple like supports the continuation of this work. Let the words settle back into silence. Nothing more is required. Awareness remains. The path remains. Not somewhere ahead, but here, alive in the way you meet this moment. What changes most quietly is not the world, but your relationship to it. Events still arise. Emotions still move. Thoughts still appear and dissolve. Yet they no longer demand the same allegiance. You do not chase every impulse or obey every fear. You listen, you feel, you respond. This response is no longer rushed. It carries the weight of understanding rather than the pressure of urgency. There is a softness now in how the mind holds experience. Not softness as weakness, but as flexibility. Like bamboo that bends without breaking, awareness adapts. This flexibility allows you to remain open even when circumstances tighten. You discover that openness is not a risk. It is protection of a deeper kind. The ancient teachings point again and again to this truth. Freedom is not found by escaping life, but by seeing it clearly. Clarity does not remove difficulty, but it removes confusion. And without confusion, difficulty becomes navigable. Pain can be met without panic. Joy can be enjoyed without fear of loss. Uncertainty can be held without collapse. As this part comes to rest, let the sense of effort dissolve completely. Nothing needs to be achieved. Nothing needs to be concluded. The mind does not need to hold these words. They have already done their work by pointing back to what is always here. The breath continues. Awareness continues. The path continues, not as a destination waiting ahead, but as a living process unfolding in real time. And within this unfolding, you move forward not driven by fear, not pulled by craving, but guided by a quiet, steady presence that knows how to remain, how to respond, and how to rest in the middle of life exactly as it is.